So as we were kind of looking for ideas of different things that we wanted to talk about at our meetings, the Native American kiddos kind of came up multiple times just because there is a large amount of Native American cultured kids in our throughout foster care. So we want to be able to bond with them, educate ourselves on their culture and what we can do to kind of bring them back to their history and keep their culture alive. So we ran into Raquel and Jessica. I don't know. Jessi, sorry.
Okay.
And we've heard amazing, great things about both of them. Raquel actually was a social worker. She worked with ICWA. She has kind of been around and obviously knows a lot about the culture. So take it away. Do you want to sit here? Is that okay?
I'll come up there.
Okay,
and then we'll
perfect.
try. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Raquel Franklin, from Standing Rock, born and raised there. Used to be the ICWA director for Standing Rock for about 4 years before turning it over to the now lady Rebecca, and the one who trained her. And then from there I went to CPS. We call it CPS. You guys call it something different, I think, but ours is Child Protection. I think each tribe is different in how they call their tribal social services. But we so I was a director there for about 2 years before leaving there, and then coming up here to the county, and then eventually ended up here with the lady. So in my time with Standing Rock on ICWA and CPS, dealt with both counties on both levels. So kind of had that relationship with state county workers along with the tribes with their kiddos, even whether they're on or off reservation. So yeah, so I'm just here with Navy now. So
all right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Jessi Leneaugh, and I'm actually an enrolled member of the Sicangu Lakota Nation in South Dakota. So, but I'm here to talk about North Dakota tribes, which may seem kind of weird, but I'm going to kind of give an overview of some things that I've learned along the way. And I've been working at NADI for 4 years now. I work on the ICWA implementation grant, and we have 1 more year of that grant, and that's housed at NADI. So that's where I met Raquel. And this is some training I do for my qualified expert witness training I have. And so I use this as part of that. So I'm going to kind of talk broadly about North Dakota tribes, and Raquel's really going to hone in on Standing Rock because that's where she's from. So between her and I, we're both Lakota, right? We're just from different bands of Lakota. So that'd be more what we would know. So that's what we're kind of leading with tonight. And we were told not to feel bad if there wasn't many people in the crowd. So, you know, I'm like a tree person. And so I made 6 copies. I was like, woo, if we get 6, then that's awesome. So I don't fight over them. They're really pretty. They're in color. So I'm going to pass those off and you do what you will with them. Yeah.
It's okay.
Awesome. And then we, like I said, we're leaving this PowerPoint with the group. So anyone that wants it, please feel free to reach out and get that. Yep. All right. When I do my work, I always kind of like to start with a quote and end with a quote. So this is a quote from an elder from where I'm from. The cornerstone of Lakota culture can be summed up in the words family and kinship. Family is the backbone, the foundation of our culture. We're given substance, nurtured, and sustained by our family. Next here, I want to show you where the 4 tribal nations are in North Dakota. Okay, and that may be confusing because sometimes I think people know that there's 5. There's actually 5 in North Dakota. But way down in the corner here in the, what would that be, the east? Way down here in the corner, yep. That's where Sisseton Wahpeton is. And that's that itty bitty triangle popped up there, that little wedge. That is Sisseton Wahpeton. So we don't get a lot of action from over in that area. So what we're going to talk about predominantly is these 4 tribal nations. And the blue boxes do not do them justice. These are itty bitty things in the blue boxes to hone in on. So looking at the top, there's Belcourt, and you can see there's a little box inside of there. And just so people are aware, these aren't completely current stats, but there's 35,000 enrolled members at Belcourt or at Turtle Mountain the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. 35,000 members. Obviously, those 35,000 do not live in that cube. A lot of them live off tribal land. Next down here is a weird shaped landmass is the Spirit Lake tribe. Okay, and they're Dakota. So some of what you're going to hear from us is relatable, but once again, we're looking at Dakota versus Lakota. And then down here, way at the bottom, we have Standing Rock, and Standing Rock is North Dakota and South Dakota. You can see their landmass is quite a bit larger. And I'm sorry, I meant to mention that there's, let's see, Spirit Lake, 7,500 members right there. And then down at Standing Rock, 15,000 members. And then up at MHA, which is, MHA is also known as 3 affiliated tribes. They have 16,000 members up there. And then over here in this box, that little bitty box in the box, once again, that is another little landmass that was given to the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. And I myself have never been to Trenton, that area. You have, we could talk about that, but it's so tiny up there. And I know they have like a casino and that's probably about it. But so we're talking 35,000 members and they have that box and that box, you know, of land. But so just kind of wanting to give you an idea of how many people we're considering when we talk about Native Americans in North Dakota. And oftentimes when we discuss Native America, and we talk about how we came to be, this has a little bit of history in it. I didn't pull too much of my older stuff, more current, but a lot of times when we think of tribes, we think of reservations, we think this like just this happened, right? That Native Americans were just relocated to tribes. And in this slide, what I'm wanting to portray is that this was from the MHA Nation being formed to Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa is a 30-year process, right? So these 4 different tribes went through 4 different journeys to get the land that they're on today. And I'm not going to read through all that. Like I said, you guys can get this handout afterward, but just to show, so. All right. And sometimes, like I said, I don't want to make this a history lesson. We kind of want to give some current info, but really wanting to hone in on the why, right? Why we are tribal nations and we have a government to government relationship with the United States of America. And that is based on our tribal sovereignty. And that is when on contact, when we were first encountered that we were on this land, we are the first inhabitants of this land. And in coming here and treatying with us, we are written into, we're the only, basically we're the only group specifically identified in the Constitution because we have that sovereign relationship with the US government. And then this is just talking about as today, like a lot of people might think of like maybe there was like an erosion of tribal sovereignty, like maybe we're not, maybe it's not as comparable as it once was, but just letting everyone know, you know, that it's very much alive and thriving. And that when you think of, if you think about it, really tribal chairmen are comparable to the president of the United States. I think a lot of people don't consider that, you know, and as a joke back home, they say like Secret Service is with the president, that the tribal chairman's cousins are with him. So, and just putting it in perspective, you know. All right, and so that is based on that tribal sovereignty is what developed into what we have with the government and their trust responsibility, right? So that is to represent the best interests of tribes, to protect the safety and well-being of tribal members, and to fulfill its treaty obligations and commitments. So culture, right? So culture is passed down from generation to generation and sometimes relates to religious practices, things like food, art, language, health, how we relate to and how we think of and who we think of as family. It's family specific. Native traditions vary from tribe to tribe, community to community, and extended family to extended family. And I always like to put the iceberg in anything that I present, because I feel like it very much conveys why we need Native people to come to things like this, to let people know what's going on, why we need, my part's ICWA. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Indian Child Welfare Act, but specifics, but that's what I train to. And a big part of what I do is I train qualified expert witnesses, representatives from tribes, to be in court with families, basically, and to give a testimony. And so I feel like the top is what we see when we just look at people, maybe what our perception and our bias conform is the top, but there's all of this underneath the surface that we don't get to see, right? Those are things we learn. And a lot of times I think because we work in child welfare, you're seeing our most vulnerable population that you may never get to see what's underneath because you're not exposed to it. You're working with our most vulnerable population, and they may not be practicing these things that other people that are less vulnerable in our tribes would be and are. All right, we are all related. So although individual tribes have their own distinct and different origins, histories, and languages, Plains Indians are united by core beliefs and values that emanate from respect for the earth and understanding of humankind's relationship with nature. This is where a lot of times I think there's some misunderstanding about extended family and this concept of kinship, and we're going to get into that a little bit more, but I have a short video that I'm going to play, and that conveys a lot of understanding regarding family. Like, I know when I was growing up, I went to my parents were married. I had no step, nothing in my family, but I lost 4 grandmothers. And so people are like, well, how many grandmothers do you have? Right? That comes up. Or how many cousins do you have? Or they don't know that my mom's sister's kids are my brothers and sisters. So even then they'll be like, we only have 1 brother and 1 sister. No, actually I have 8 brothers and 6 sisters. So just depending on what your level of acculturation is, and we're going to get into that after the video. Just a short video at 7 minutes. So I'm going to play that now, and then we'll continue on.
For tribal peoples, the concept of family is far more expansive than mainstream definitions. This is how we were taught. Children are given to us as gifts from the Creator, and as such, children are considered sacred, and they belong to the community. We were also taught and believe that each of us, each child, comes into the world for a purpose and to fulfill his or her destiny. That purpose and destiny is not only a personal call, but also serves as fulfillment for the continuation of the community and the tribe. The personal is connected to and serves the community. Children, or the child, are in a sacred relationship with the tribe. We refer to our relatives or relations, and these terms include what the general population views as family. The best way to describe this is to say that there is a relationship involved. For those of us who are tribal, the word family includes a larger constellation than for most non-tribal people. The word family can include not only immediate blood-related individuals, but also people who have been a part of the family who are not blood-related. The concept of extended family takes on the inclusion of many people who are connected in some fashion to this family. In many tribal communities, family can include groups of people, such as clans or societies, who have specific functions in the organization of the tribe. When a child or youth becomes part of one of these groups, the members become mentors or are viewed and treated as extended family. Within many tribal family structures, all men and women of a certain age are viewed as and treated as grandmothers and grandfathers. Therefore, a child can have many relationships that provide the experience of being supported, nurtured, and loved by a grandparent. Grandmothers and grandfathers have important roles in the community and in the tribe. From that group come the respected elders, the carriers of wisdom, the gatekeepers of culture. They are the link to the past, the ancestors, and to the future, the children. It is much the same with having many aunties and uncles. For those who are the same age as the child's parents can also serve as aunties and uncles to the child. Aunties and uncles can serve as surrogate parents, mentors, and another pair of eyes in the community to ensure that the child is learning how to behave, how to relate, and how to follow proper protocol so that the child can develop a sense of belonging in the community and what their place is in that community. With so many people who are related to the child, should that child decide to act in an inappropriate manner, there is always an auntie or uncle to call little Johnny or Susie over and ask, "What are you doing over there in the corner, my little niece or nephew? You know you're not supposed to be playing with matches. You might start a fire. Now come over here and sit next to me." Safety and security is established, as well as the rules of conduct. With so many aunties and uncles, a child also gains many cousins, some of who are viewed and treated as siblings. Children grow up surrounded by a network of relationships that support the child's growth, gives them a sense of belonging, and helps them to find their place in the community, and ultimately helps them to fulfill their purpose and destiny. American Indians from across the country and from diverse tribes view the four-legged, the winged, those who swim in the water, and those who creep, slither, and crawl on the earth as our relatives, as our brothers and sisters. Our prayers most often include these brothers and sisters as our relatives. Our larger family also includes plants, trees, rocks, rivers, oceans, clouds, the sky, the air, and those beings who have gone before us and those who will come after us. Betty E.S. Duran, MSW, MPH, a professor at the University of Oklahoma and a member of the Pueblo of Pewaukee, New Mexico, quotes Herring, 1989, that American Indian values lean toward a cosmic identity, a harmony of the individual with the tribe with the land, and the land with the spirit of the universe. A tribal medicine man from one of the nearby pueblos once told me that when he and the other spiritual people prayed, they prayed for the whole of the cosmos. He likened the reverence for the all to holding the cosmos in the palm of your hands, nestled in the downiness of eagle plumes, and praying for harmony and balance in all that is. So all of this, even the heavens, the stars, the planets, are related to us. They are part of our extended family. Many of the creation stories tell us that we came from the stars. In California, many of the tribes sing their bird songs, and the songs tell of the migration from the stars to this earth. One of the bird singers shared that the spirits, our star ancestors, flew around the world 12 times before deciding that this place in Southern California was where they would land and live. The bird songs memorialized the journey, and they continue to be sung these many generations later. The issue of who is family was highlighted when the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed on November 8, 1978. The act made it clear in its provisions for placement of children, should they need to be removed from their home and parents or guardians, that the first order of preference is with family members, which includes extended family. In this matter, the act states, "The standards to be applied in meeting the preference requirements of this section shall be the prevailing social and cultural standards of the Indian community in which the parent or extended family resides, or with which the parent or extended family members maintain social and cultural ties." The important part of this statement is that the standards to be applied shall be the prevailing social and cultural standards of the Indian community. This allows for the community to include as extended family those whom they have traditionally counted in that number, regardless of blood ties. This larger view of family and who constitutes that family requires that non-tribal social workers cast wider their net when looking for family or extended family for out-of-home placement when working with tribal families and the tribal community. It is also important to know, when working in the tribal community, that the word relative is relative.
And so when we think of tribes, right, there was some work done by Karen Lee Barkdale at UND and a couple other, and some of her students, and it was about shared tribal values. And some of those shared tribal values are, I'm not moving my thing. Okay, and like I said, I am not going to read through this stuff. You guys don't need me to do that. So this is just for your own knowledge, right? So, but just these overall basic values like of autonomy, solidarity, competence, and then spirituality, balance, and wisdom, right? So these, once again, these are things that I think you're going to see interwoven with individuals that you're working with. But I also think these are things when you think of like, what are like, if you ask us like, what are your 7 sacred rights? Like we actually have things that formulate our beliefs, like maybe religion does for you, like what you would refer to as maybe your organized religion, we would view as spirituality. And of those things, these would be our teachings. So you might get 7, you might get 6, you might get 8, but what it comes out to is there's basically things that permeate across Indian country that kind of just, it's fluid throughout Indian country, right? And so that in my part, I kind of want to talk about like this concept of we are all related, right? So kin is a group of people of common ancestry, right? The clan is one's relatives. So when we talk about bands and clans, I think that's a part that gets hard. I know like MHA, like I'm not from MHA, so I won't speak of MHA particularly like detailed, but like I know they have bands and clans. And for like Raquel and I, we too have bands and clans. Like there's seven fires under what were our tribes basically. So in tribes there's even sub layers of tribes actually. And so, but this concept of kinship is that we can be related, but you could also be like my mom's best friends that she went to college with. Those are my aunties because they're considered like hunka in our language is making a relative. So we adopted them in, for lack of better explanation. They're my adopted aunties.
So how far does that go back?
Forever, honestly. That making of a relative has always been amongst Native people, I would say.
And I speak a little bit about that.
A little more in depth, but no one's an orphan in Indian country. Like it's not a concept that we even have in our language. So everyone belonged to some degree. Right, and so these kin networks support identity formation, a sense of belonging, recognition of shared history, and survival, overall survival of the group. And so when we talk about like these concepts of kinship and being related, I think that it's natural for all people to gravitate towards what you know. It's a comfort thing. If we walk into a room, especially a room of hundreds of people, we look for somebody we know, or we tend to look for people that look like us that we relate to. And that is no different in Indian country, except it's to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. It is like, yeah. But nth degree, I mean like native degree. I worked with Harmony for a couple months when we started, and the other people that we worked with on the grant, there was 5 of us, and Harmony and I were the native individuals on the grant, and the other 3 were non-native. And they said, well, you guys should have told us you knew each other when we hired you. We were like, we didn't know each other. Like I'm from South Dakota. She's from as north as you can get, and I'm from South Dakota, you know. But that's just like native people. They're just like, you're gonna notice that there's just something that gravitates them together. It's just
like when you go to Walmart, I go to Walmart and go around and we're all like
campaigning
and
you
know about, I don't know, you know, they pass each other all like Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're always scanning for automatic.
Yeah. So just to help you wrap your head around this a little bit, so today I Googled it because my number was 567 when I did this a couple of years ago. So something happened in a couple of years, but so there is 574 federally recognized tribes, right? And 5 of them inhabit North Dakota. 4 really, just the 10th into South Dakota, but and each of those has their own culture, including ceremonies, rituals, beliefs, values that make them unique. So although like I'm talking about, there is some shared values, what becomes hard is we tend to start to generalize rather than know that there's uniqueness in each individual tribe that you're looking at. And here I kind of break down like just some numbers for people just that I found interesting. That there's still actually 150 tribes that are waiting for recognition to be tribes. And since, let's see, since I believe it was since 1978, so since the implementation of ICWA, only 12 petitions have gone through for tribes to be federally recognized. There's probably over 250 non-federally recognized tribes, so those are state recognized tribes. So this is a ton of tribes, right? And it costs in the upwards of millions of dollars, like at least over $2 million to put in a petition to be considered to be federally recognized. So they're literally, if everyone got federally recognized, we'll be looking at 576 plus over 250 plus the 150 that are still trying to be recognized. So think of that, 4 in this state, but if you go to California or Alaska, you're looking at over upwards of hundreds of Native communities, different Native communities in those states. And these next slides are really for your information, right? So at NATI, we had like a thing that we put out, a booklet years ago. It's outdated and we don't use it anymore. But when we put that together, we had the 4 tribes come together and have different leaders from the tribes come together and give us some information, some kind of across the board information that they would share. And what I have here is 4 slides, one from each slide on kinship. And I'm not going to go into each of those things. But it shows you one person's idea of what kinship is, though, right? Because that person is just one person that could be from a band or clan that does things the way they do things, which could differ from somebody else. So these things are not across the board. That's why I don't like to explain what I don't know. So I said, I'm from South Dakota. So she's going to talk about Standing Rock and really, if you really want some specifics, I mean, like I would reach out to MHA satellite office here in town for specific MHA stuff. And then if you really want, if you have a Turtle Mountain population, then Harmony would do that. Because like I said, some of the stuff Raquel's going to talk about is going to be, you're going to see some of that in Spirit Lake, but it also, like I said, it's Dakota versus Lakota. So. But yeah, so these will be in your notes. This different things, like we were talking today, so we're from the same, we're Lakota. And if you marry in my culture, traditionally, if I get married, I'm not supposed to ever speak to my father-in-law. And my husband, if he was Native, would not speak to my mother.
You're not even supposed to be in the same room
Yeah.
together.
Well, my husband would like that.
Yeah, maybe you can get adopted in. But basically, but I asked her, is that what you believed? And she said she heard of it, but she didn't practice it, right? And so same thing with me. These are the things you're going to read in what I just showed you, those 4 slides. And like I said, it's kind of like when you think about like Native Americans, and let's say, I'm sorry, I'm losing my spot in my notes. But basically, kind of like those things, like if they say, oh, Native kids don't do eye contact. That is a blanket statement. Native kids do eye contact. I do eye contact for the world I'm living in. I do eye contact And I know when I'm in the room with my grandma, I don't do eye contact with my grandma because I respect her, right? So what it's hard to talk about these things because they're so different, right? And what it comes down to is what I'm going to end with is this concept of acculturation, right? This one is parenting. Yeah, so it's talking about eye contact, and then another big one, and people joke about it, I even joke about it, is running on Indian time, okay? And Indian time does exist, but it doesn't exist for what we think it exists for, right? So we were always taught, we're always in trouble. This year we did really good at the conference. We've always notoriously been in trouble for these sessions are running late. We don't cut people off. We can't, we won't. We give them their time frame, and if they go over, we can't cut them off out of respect.
Especially if it's an elder.
You don't, that's where it came from.
And everybody's
So-
like, we need to have her stop, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you tell her to stop.
No, and so we don't
Yeah.
do that, right? So I think this year went really good, but it's not typically something that'd be like, oh, I'm running on Indian time, like I'm coming late. It means like the event that I'm at is going to run longer because no one's going to stop the person at the bottom. That's what that means. And then just in regard, I know Raquel's going to get into these, so I'm not going to get into too much of it, but discipline can look like so many things. I think sometimes people think that Native people aren't like watching their kids like they're supposed to, but there's really this concept of in completely healthy families and in completely broken families, this concept of autonomy exists where kids learn but by experiences. That's just the way it is, you know? And so, and there's like these cautionary tales. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Iktomi. That's like our go-to, that's the trickster. That's like a coming of age tale. Iktomi stories teach you cautionary tales of do's and don'ts and stuff. And that the shame and avoidance, that comes up too. Like if you do something and you're around the elders, they will ignore you. That's just how it is. I guess that's just part of discipline. But once again, that just depends on your level of acculturation. Right. So in looking at tribal diversity, what I'm trying to do is kind of debuff this conception that people from the same affiliation are the same level of acculturation. I think this is what gets us into trouble, is when we think of acculturation and assimilation. Some people think that you have to be you're either acculturated or you're assimilated. I prefer to think of acculturation because then I'm part of a process. Assimilation is done to me. Acculturation is a choice that I make. So this level is a culmination of one's family support system and their own beliefs of preserving traditions, right? This slide just kind of sums up what I just said about acculturation. So the focus is on us, right? Assimilation is how we are perceived. That's when someone's like, oh, you're conquered. Assimilation means like the whole system got sucked up and there's nothing left. We're all the same, we're melting pot, right? Acculturation, I'm sorry, in my opinion, is like a tossed salad, right? The tossed salad's only, it gets better and better with each individual veggie that's added to it. We all get to still be us, but we make up this awesome salad. And so that's why when I think of acculturation rather than this concept of melting pot. So my last slide leading into what Raquel's going to talk about is I just want us to keep this in mind, especially when Raquel's going through her things. Like I said, where someone's at is it's not specific. These are things that are going to be based on how traditional that family is. There's very traditional families that are not mainstream at all. And then this concept of transitional, bicultural, and then assimilation under the premise of acculturation. So in kind of keeping this in mind as we look at things, that nothing specific. Like for myself, I would call myself a transitional person. I live in two worlds. I'm a dual citizen. I'm a part of both. So
I think in today's times, I think a lot of our elders are traditional. We see a lot of elderly still doing their traditional ways, and then the generation that you guys are seeing now, such as Jessi and myself, we're in two worlds. Having to navigate in two worlds. I was raised traditionally in every sense of the word traditionally, but as I got older, I started coming more into the mainstream and having to learn how to function in society as a mother, as a person who works and pays taxes and drives vehicles and all that. But then sometimes when I go back home and talk with family and whatnot, the elders are very much so still traditional. Some of them hang on to that piece and don't want to go over to mainstream.
Can I have you jump over here so
Yeah.
you're a little closer to the mic?
Loud, okay?
I have a question for Jessi.
Mhm.
The one slide, not a couple slides, but mothers call the sisters mothers. Is that through all the tribes or is that just?
That just
was for
depends.
That tribe?
Particular, it could be to that band or clan in that tribe, right? And then it depends on the level of acculturation they're at. A lot of people who are now, like some people won't follow those old ways of looking at different family members like that, you know, and then a lot of times you'll see a stronger movement towards like that mothers. What you're asking me about is from matriarchal tribes versus patriarchal too. I know you might have more questions and answers tonight, sorry. But no, you guys get a hold of us anytime though, like, we're just sharing some small things tonight. We're Nady and we're
You got an HA on that one.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to do this. Yeah, just that tribe or is it? Do they all say, I mean, we've had kids come in and say auntie, and I'm like, oh, they'll say my auntie. And you, like you said, you don't know if that really your auntie or your, you know.
no, but the thing is, it really is their auntie. They say auntie, that means they chose that person to be their auntie. Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit about that when we're talking about hookah stuff. So and why that it is the way that is. Loud? Okay.
I put it right next to her, so
Okay.
hopefully we're okay.
So here's a slide, and I'm not gonna even attempt to say these words because I don't speak my language. I know that when I hear it, because I grew up with my grandmother and my father who speak fluent Lakota, speak to each other all the time in Lakota when my grandmother was alive, and just hearing it, so I pick up words. So when people are praying or talking in Lakota, there's certain things I can pick up, but I cannot read it nor write it. You know, it's kind of complex, and you have to have a guttural sound, and you have to have your tongue a certain way to say certain words. So just not going to go there. So on this slide here, the Lakota perspective of conception, pregnancy, childbirth, and lifetime of an individual and return to the spirit world. So a Lakota elder says that in ideal conditions throughout our lifetime, and I'm going to this because I can't see my. Throughout our lifetime, we pass through 4 doorways, right? Childhood, adolescence, adulthood, elderly, before returning back to the spirit world. So some of our ceremonies involve all 4 of those in one big circle. So the circle of life, I'm sure you guys heard of Lion King, right? Right. So in this slide here, the older Lakota believe that the spirit of a child comes from the spirit world and enters the rooms upon conception. Because women in our culture, in Lakota culture, our women are when get have a baby and whatnot or whatever, we are considered life bearers. That means we are carrying another life within our womb, right? So if you kind of think about it, when I was driving over here, I was thinking about this concept, and I guess I really never really thought about it, but you think about everyone has a spirit, right? We're all spirit filled, all of us. We have soul, spirit, right? And then we get pregnant, we're carrying another spirit within our own. I guess I never really thought about that, and I wonder, now I can see clearly as to why they say women are we're the barriers of life. We have all this the spirituality carrying with the mothers because of the child that we're carrying in our womb. So during the time of pregnancy, the mother is treated with gentleness, respect, encouraged to talk to her child so that when the time comes, there'll be no problems with the child's birth. So And I'm sure, I don't know if any of you all did it, but when I was pregnant with my first child, I talked to her all the time. I was pregnant. I didn't have any, I didn't go around obviously. So I just sat and I talked with her before she was born. So back in the day, they say if you're talking to your child and dad's talking to child and grandma's talking to child, you know, we all know that now from science that child can hear in the womb. So they're hearing and they're sensing. The child can even sense, well, in mom's room, if she's depressed, if she's crying, if she's scared, if she's sad, they all sense that while carrying child in the womb. So I know that I have a friend back home who she was pregnant. She didn't want the pregnancy. She was having problems with the dad. They were married and on a verge of divorce. And at the time in her mind, she said that, and she told me that, she said, in my mind, I thought, I don't want this child. So right then and there, it was an issue because baby can feel the fact mom didn't want him. It was a boy. She ended up having it. They got back together. She had baby. To this day, this child and mom don't have that close bond because the child already in the womb felt he wasn't wanted. So, and she knows that, he knows that. She said, with all of my children, she's got 4. This is the only child that I don't have a very good bond relationship. They're not close. I mean, they live together and whatnot, he calls them mom and all that, but as far as bonding with their child, it's not there because of what happened while she was carrying child in the womb. So it's very vital that mothers take care of themselves emotionally and mentally and spiritually while carrying a child. Prior to birth, preparations are made. First and foremost, an elderly woman is usually selected who is gentle, kind-hearted, and possesses a lot of wisdom to help the pregnant woman prepare for the coming of the child. So back in the day, we all know that there wasn't hospitals. You couldn't go to the emergency room and have your kid, right? A lot of the stuff was born at home type stuff. So it's usually the elderly women, your aunties and your grandmas that help mom give birth and whatnot. So growing up, I think I never really questioned it, but now after getting older and talking with my father and whatnot, I found out that he was born at home. I didn't know that about him, and my grandmother obviously was born at home. In my understanding of it, I think when I was a CPS director, we had a couple of babies born not in a hospital, and trying to get a birth certificate for those kids was hard because somebody has to sign off on their birth, right? When you don't have that when you're at home. I think one mom had her baby in jail because she happened to be in jail. The other one, I think, had it in the bathroom of her home. And so somebody has to sign off on that. But those are the only 2 times that I've had instances where our moms had babies not in the hospital. So, but back in the day, there were no hospitals, obviously. So it was usually the aunties and the grandmas and aunties and all that stuff that helped mom give birth. So at the time of birth, the elderly woman who is selected is summoned to help when the child is born. The elderly cut the cord and clean the baby's mouth. After the naming, she makes a prayer for the baby so that he or she will grow up happy to have a good and productive life. So in the next couple of slides, we'll talk about the naming when parents give their child a name. And obviously this is pre-European contact. So at the birth, the baby was discouraged from crying. So on this one here, so there was also like inner tribal warfare going on, and women and children would run and hide. A lot of the times they had covered the mouth of the child to keep child quiet so that the enemy would not know where she's at. They found them, obviously they were killed or taken captive. But and this one here talks about how after years and years of doing that, I guess, the child just kind of remembers now that not to be crying. But we know today that a child crying is usually because they're crying because they want something, right? They're wet, they're hungry, they're cold, they want to be held, right? But back in those days, that wasn't like that. They were actually encouraged not to cry because of a warfare, I guess, going on. So when baby is born, baby is a girl, the cord is placed in an amulet shaped like a turtle, which is on the left-hand side. The baby is a boy, the cord is placed in the amulet shaped like a lizard. The amulet was usually hung above the baby in the cradle board. So I don't know if Jess has a lot of family that still practice this, but when a baby is born, obviously, you know, they have the umbilical cord, right? And eventually that falls off. well, most Native Americans that I know in all 9 tribes in South Dakota, they all keep their umbilical cord. I have all 3 of my children's umbilical cord. And then when my youngest was born here in Florida, Pensacola, Florida, and we went in to do the checkup whatever it was. Well, her umbilical cord was coming loose. Nurse comes in, checks baby over. She looks at the umbilical cord. She's like, "Oh, it came off." I'm like, so I kind of stood up and looked, and me and Dad sitting there, and we kind of looked, and she's like, "Oh, took it." She just whipped it in the trash. And I was like, "Oh." So I turned around and I was looking at the dad like, "What do we say? Do we say something or what do we do here?" So he's like, just And so she did her thing and like, "Yeah, baby's fine. Wait, okay, yeah." So she's like, "Okay, you can get baby dressed and come on here." I'm like, "Okay." The minute she closed that door, boy, he was up and in that trash. And he's just like, "Yeah, I can't believe." Of course, you don't know. They don't know. So yeah, so we keep our umbilical cord. A lot of the times, I think mine are in. Mine's just in pouches, and I think grandmas did that, but they put it in a pouch. But some families have a turtle, and some families have a turtle or lizard, and that's where they put their umbilical cord and hang it. So one of the sayings back at home was with the little kids running around and they're digging over here and they're digging over there, and they're like, they must be looking for their umbilical cord. They must, that's you could when the little kids are crawling around digging and stuff. That's one of the sayings, is that they're looking for their umbilical cord. So the naming ceremony, and this is just one ceremony amongst many, but because of the respect and gift of life given to the mother and a family with the Creator, the child was given a name that would reflect his or her abilities and contributions to the family in Teoshbe. This was prior to the use of the surnames. This encouraged the respect for individualism, and there was no bastards in the Lakota culture. Like I said, when baby was born, there was already a naming ceremony, and that's how they got some of their names before surnames. So like when we talk about introductions and where are you from, I'm like, yeah, Jessi, when I met Jessi, I was like, okay, she's like, I think you said you're from Rosebud. And I'm like, we ask each other, well, who's your family? Like, who are your family, right? And we kind of like, I guess, know which families from which tribe by their name. So I can say I'm from the White Shield clan, and everybody's gonna know that's the South Dakota side of the reservation, right? White Lightning tribe, last name White Lightning, they're usually North Dakota side, right? I can't think of some like Oglala. There are some last names in Oglala, and just by the names you can tell what tribe they're from or where they're at according to their tribe by their last name. There was a couple of people up here in Standing Rock where they're native, and I knew they were native, but I said that name's not a Standing Rock name, it's from a different tribe. So we kind of like know each other by our last names, our families, and where we're from. So most elders, if you come into contact with one, will say, well, they are gonna ask you where you're from, like, who's your family? And you don't just say, well, my family is Jessi. Well, Jessi Leneaugh. And I'm like, no. Who's your family? Like, who's your whole clan people? And that's how we kind of differentiate where you're from and all that stuff. So, and I find myself doing the same thing. I do that even to this day when I come into contact with people. I'm like, well, when I was working for CPS up here, I remember they're like, reports come in and they're like, do you know them? I'm like, what's the last name? So I'm looking at last name, and trying to think in my mind what tribe this person can be from. So that's kind of how I do it. And that's just taught because everybody else does it like that. But so childhood, babies are treasured, cherished, and families are very protective of them. Elders believe that the soft spot on top of the baby's head gave the spirit of the baby the ability to come and go as he or she pleased, but was constantly encouraged by the mother to stay with the family. So we all know that baby's born with a soft spot, so that's a vital thing for our native babies. Children are encouraged to be children and we're happy. It is believed that the strength and the spirit of a child was connected to the head and the hair of a child. Therefore, the child's hair was never cut, nor was the child ever harmed in any way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and he or she was strengthened spiritually by their mother. So the issue with, and I think I have a slide in here, I think, about our hair. So my youngest child, she's 12 now, but we've never cut her hair. She was born with a full set of hair, and we were teasing her when she was
younger, that she had what they call a alopecia. The males in the dance, when you see the porcupine hairs, we call it alopecia, because her hair was just, she was a full set of hair, mind you, and so when it wet, it's all slick, and when it was dry, and it starts to stand up, so she's sitting there with these little things like this, and it's like, so she's never cut her hair's down to her butt right now, but her dad will never ever cut it. I think just the other day I was asking, can we just trim it? Nope, you're not trimming it. I was like, ooh. And she comes over and she's like, Mom, can we cut my hair? And I was like, you have to ask your dad. I mean, that's not even up for discussion at all, but you can go ask him. I said, I already know the answer, but go ahead and go. But it's getting to the point where it's getting too much for her. She's only 12 and it's just too much. And it's so thick. Oh my God, I'm like, I don't think I'd want all that hair. I mean, I have hair too, but that's thick hair. It's not thin hair, it's thick hair. So
Can I ask a question? Does that
sure.
kind of vary, like tribe by tribe? Because I've heard like you never cut their hair until they're a year old. You wait until they're a year, or I just didn't know if that varies or.
I think it varies for
Yeah.
sure, but once again, it takes back to that level of acculturation.
Yeah.
Obviously, my family believes differently.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cut my hair, and a lot of times you see people that will cut their hair when a loved one passes that you're extremely close to. You cut your
Yeah.
hair, what they say is like power and souls in your hair, for lack of better explanation.
So I cut my hair twice in my life. First time was when I went to the military. So like when you cut your hair, and I'll talk, I don't know if it's in the next slide. No. Okay. But I talk a little bit more about the hair thing. So a little bit more better explanation for that. So
Is that the same with, sorry, I didn't.
No, that's fine.
Is that the same with naming ceremonies? Because I know I've heard too that like sometimes they don't do a naming ceremony until like a close relative passes or until there's something that happens. And
That just depends
Yeah.
too. Like I don't have my name yet,
okay,
Yeah.
but they say that you'll know when you're supposed to know.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and a lot of the times it's usually from my family, it came from the elderly, the elders in our family that said it's time. Like for my oldest daughter, she got her naming when she was probably about 6 or 7. And her dad, I met him in the military, so he lived in South Carolina. So every year she went back and forth between us guys every summer. So her auntie and I got together with all the other Unchi grandmas there and said, I think we need to name her. So they approached me, yeah, you can go ahead and do it. So we prepared for it. But her in English, her Indian name is comes home alone, meaning she's out there, away from us out there in a non-native world, and she comes home alone. She's always coming home alone, and we did that for probably about 10 years. Or she did that. So she had a naming ceremony with her male cousin, who got his naming ceremony as well. So I got mine when I came back from the military. Yeah, and I also cut my hair prior to going to the military. So there's like significances to why one cuts their hair and when you get your name ceremony. My youngest has not gotten hers yet. So I think it depends on family too, as to when you want to get your naming, Yeah. So let's see here. A child being taken away from the family they grew up loving is traumatic, right? When people say that there isn't enough room in the house, it's good to keep in mind that a teepee had only one room and the family was happy. Children were taught earlier that boys do what they do, girls do what they do, and there was respect for each other as well as knowledge of boundaries of one another. So my understanding of years ago, everybody is in the teepee, right? I think when the older men or women married off is when they got their own teepee in their own house. And then that's when they moved out of their parents' house and now they have their own. So I think it kind of went like that. So last slide, we're talking about boundaries, right? So knowledge of boundaries. So one of the many reasons for teaching and acknowledgement and respect for individual boundaries was to prevent incest, as well as, and I'm not going to say that name, and it's basically meaning to overpower someone with negative energy. So teaching your children about boundaries prevented incest from happening. And I don't know if this is still, maybe traditional families still kind of do that, teach them that their boundaries of who they are, and you keep your space, I keep my space type stuff. But back in the day, that's basically how they prevented incest from happening. So here's the significance of our hair, right? Different tribes have different teachings and values of their hair and how to care for them. Our hair is the physical extension of our thoughts, prayers, dreams, aspirations, experiences, and history. When we cut our hair, it represents the end of something that once was and a new beginning. So hence, when you're mourning, I did cut my hair when my grandmother died, braided it, cut it, put it in casket with her. I did cut it, well, just a snippet of it. So when I was a director for CPS, we had to do, I made sure we did training on testing of drugs, right? Because we had a lot of meth going on. So brought in a guy to teach us how to do that. It was the swab, urine, and the other one was a hair follicle. So doing a hair follicle, I volunteered because I had a lot of hair. The other girls, unfortunately, had short hair like Jessi, and they're like, okay, I don't cut in my hair, you know. So you just needed just a little bit to sample so we can get the actual feel of putting it in where and how certain things you got to do with it and to send it off to the lab. So I think in the back of my head here, I kind of got some hair and took a snippet of it and I used it and whatever. I didn't throw that hair away though, I kept it. I still have it to this day. I put it in an envelope, sealed it, and I still have it. Just our hair is very significant to us guys.
How long, if you you cut your hair because you lose someone that's close to you, then you just let it grow, or do you keep it short for a certain length of time? Okay.
Just let it go. Yeah, I think back in the day, people would mourn for a year. Usually a year is the point where you can mourn that. We're supposed to be mourning for a year, but I think this day and age, there's so much that's going on that I don't think that people even have time to mourn. They don't have time to grieve on certain things, because you think of even in the last year of all the pandemic, there's a lot of death. It's like it's one after, and I just went to a funeral Monday, virtual.
Yeah.
But there's so much death coming on. It's like, when do you have time to actually grieve? You know, so it's hard. It's hard on people. So, but yeah, it's usually about a year. I think back in the day, if you're really traditional, you do it for a year. You would mourn for a year, but you do let your hair grow back again. So, let's see here. It's never thrown away, but rather burned with sage and sweetgrass in a ceremonial way. When our hair is burned, all of our thoughts, prayers, dreams, aspiration, experience, and histories rise up to the Creator, right, in the smoke, to be properly taken care of. We are then guided in the direction of our prayers to be answered. Throwing our hair away is a form of personal disrespect. So hence why I didn't throw mine away. Another thing is that our belief is that when somebody asks you for some hair, you don't give your hair away. It's you kind of think, I was trying to correlate it when I was thinking about this, trying to correlate it what you guys would understand, like, you know, like the voodoo, like Louisiana, and the voodoo, the doll, they're poking it. Well, sometimes you'll see like they'll take hair out of someone's brush and they say cantations over it and blah, blah, blah. I correlate to that when somebody's asking for your hair. So a number of years back, a relative of mine, he was in Desert Storm, he's a Marine. I don't know what was going on or what he was doing, but he called me up one day and he said, can I get a piece of your hair? So I said, for what? And he said, well, I just, I'm going through this stuff and I got to do this and I got to do that. And I said, yeah, okay, I understand that. I said, but I cannot give you my hair, because if that person starts to be going down the wrong road of life, drugs, what have you, all this stuff, he's got an extension of me, and who knows what can happen with that piece of hair. And I'm a firm believer that things in the spiritual realm happen that we are not able to see, that can happen to that. So had I given it to him and he was in a bad way, he's not, but say hypothetically he was, things can be happening to me spiritually. You know, it's just, we a lot of the times we think about what's going on right now, right? But we don't ever think about in the spiritual realm. There's a lot of things that are going on that we don't see. A lot of things that we, you know, in the Bible, like they talk about you're praying, and when you pray, you're moving in the spiritual realm, right? So same with Lakota people, when they're praying, they're making things happen in the spiritual realm that we don't see. So our hair being an extension of us guys is not a good thing to just be giving it here and giving it there and whatnot. Same with like children, you don't cut their hair unless absolutely need be, obviously, right? Like Jessi said, there's times when there's some families that kind of are not really traditional, so they'll cut their kids' hair, right? And some are like us guys where we're kind of some traditional and some not. My hair is this long only because I cut my own hair, but I got injured, so I can't cut my own hair. My arm can't go any higher than this. So I'm usually like this and cut, and I can't. So it's been like this since July last year. And I'm just like, I want somebody to cut it, and nobody will touch my hair. So I'm just like, well, I just got to leave it the way it is then, I guess. But it's annoying me now because it's getting too long. But
You say you don't cut your hair, you still do hair
trims and stuff like that, yeah, to trim it up.
Trimming,
Oh, yeah.
can't like.
Yeah, I wouldn't just cut all of it off. No.
Okay, so your hair looks really good for only being cut
No, I do trim it. I do because it gets too long, and then like underneath is like that little, hairs that get all tangled. Ugh. So I'm just, it's just annoying me that it's this long. But yeah, so it says hair is a great significance. Our hairstyles are important for they portray and announce participation in various events and the feelings expressed by people. The state of mourning at a given time or stage of life, whether one is coming of age, marriageable, or one's age and tribal status. So this depends on what's going on in one's life as to what you're going to do with your hair, basically. Yeah. So adolescence. Here we're just talking about when you're going from childhood, now you're adolescent. So I'm kind of thinking that teenage range, right? They also go through a rite of passage through ceremony. Now that's basically for male and female. When they get to this age, I think males usually go with the elder males, and they are taught how to hunt, to skin, prayer, protection, and then females are starting to get taught motherly stuff, how to gather, taking care of her house, things of that nature. I think women are basically in our culture gatherers, like we gather nuts and berries and turnips and stuff like that, where the men go out and hunt the big game, bring it back. We usually skin it, gut it, and do things like that. So around the adolescent age is where they're beginning to split off. Mom's no longer teaching male sons what to do. It's now it's dad, uncles, and grandpas that are going to start doing that. And the females will be going with their moms and grandmas and aunties. And then now you're an adult, right? So even through adult, you have rites of passage for ceremonies to be welcoming them into adulthood. So one of our ceremonies is becoming of a woman. It's like our coming of age ceremony. So when she's in her menses, she's now becoming an adult. They consider her as being, because she can now bear children. So they go through that rite of passage, and then males will go through what they call a purification ceremony, which they go into an EEP ceremony to do that. So everybody in the tribe knows that, okay, these guys are now adults. So
that's not, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
That's not age specific. It's truly like for a young woman when she would get her period.
Mhm. And we have a physical thing that happens to us to know that we are now going into that, right? Males do too. We just don't see as much as we do the males. So yeah. During these ceremonies, whether it's coming of age, whether it's a naming ceremony, usually after that, a meal and a giveaway is offered for the community, just to a sign of respect. That thank you for coming to the ceremony, things of that nature. So we'll have a meal, and then after the meal we have giveaway. So usually the families will start collecting stuff for about a year, so like when my daughter got her Indian name, for that whole entire year I was collecting stuff to give away. So whoever was all there got something, right? And then the unchis, the grandmas, made the traditional meals to serve to that, and then the person who did the naming ceremony got usually a blanket or something to show respect and whatnot. That's what we didn't bring. We didn't bring our shell. I was going to bring our shell. So, and here I'm just talking about the goal of Lakota women and what their role was. Who at this point in her life, she's the first teacher for children, which is held in high regard with the rest of the family, how our children turn out and what they become dependent on what they learned from her as children. The sisters of the mothers were considered mom to her children as well. This was to prevent a child becoming orphan. So there wasn't, like Jessi was saying, there's no orphans. in our culture. So the males, their role in what they had to do in life, they also became the first teacher of their children with high regards by the rest of the family. How his children turned out and what they became also depending on what they learned from him. So this was also to prevent, again, a child from becoming an orphan and strengthen the family. So basically our children's first teachers are their parents, is basically what that is. So, and then when they're coming into an adult, now they're turning elderly, right? So by the time the individual reached the age to be considered elderly, they were cherished by their children and their parents. They were looked up to give guidance to the young ones of the family. The information they shared were valued and passed on from generation to generation. So this was prior to nursing homes. So we didn't have nursing homes back in the day. It was everybody took care of everybody basically. And growing up, I had a grandpa. I think I was very, very little, and he died when he was 104, but he never spoke. He didn't even know English. He had no, even the concept of English, but he knew when he was going to pass away. So at some point in time, I remember my dad saying, we need to go see him. So I said, okay, you know, and I think I was about 5 or 6, I think. And we went to go see him. And of course, they all speaking in Lakota with each other. And then when we left, we went home, and the next day, all the elders cooked traditional meals for him and went out and picked Indian tea, made some Indian tea, whatever, and we took it to him. They sat and they talked and all of Lakota while he was eating. We all said our goodbyes, love you, whatever, see you again. We left. He died that night. So he knew he was going to die. So his last, he basically was requesting his last meal. So I miss him very, very much. I didn't understand a lot of things that he said, but I just remember him talking to me in Lakota, and I was trying to, you know, understand what he was saying, and he would have to make motions, you know, like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what you're talking about, you know. So, but yeah, he was very wise. So I think Jessi had alluded to their virtues and values, right? So we have honesty, truth, humility, love, wisdom, courage, and respect. Those are our 7 that we go by in our daily lives. And then from there, we return to the spirit world. Our journey back to the spirit world, right? They say that when you did what you did during your time here on earth will reflect your return journey back to the spirit world. They say that if you live by the virtues and values that the Creator gave you, then you will see your relatives sooner. So back in the day when we would have someone pass away years ago, they used to do 3-day wakes, they call them. So, you know, they died on Monday, they'll wake 3 days straight, 24 hours. And then finally, and that was for people to come and show their signs of respect. But my family anyway, and I don't know how Jessi's family viewed it, but our family, when we did that, they always say the spirit hung around the body for a little while. So they didn't leave yet. They hang around with the body for those many days or whatever, and then finally they're on to their journey where they go. But this day and age, I think some of the funerals that I've gone, they only had it one night wake, next day is a funeral. So they kind of shorten it. And of course, now the pandemic, like I say, Monday, I did a virtual funeral. It's really weird because it's like, how do you show your respect in your mourning and whatnot when via Zoom? So it's just kind of hard, I think, this day and age. So yeah. So tribal society, right? So you have blood relationships and kinships are the only interconnected social institutions. So most tribal societies use folklore. Folkways and morals are more important means of social control. So like Jessi was talking about the Igdomi, that was a part of that for social control, right? Social structure is simple. Relationships are personal and individual emotions and needs are considered. So we're generalists rather than specialists, right? And we also depend on nature. So like I was saying, the presentation I did today, earlier today, I was talking about how, at least my family anyway, the elders, you know, they're sitting there thinking, you can't own Mother Earth. There's no way, there's no concept of us guys owning land. There was just no such thing as that's like Mother Earth, you gotta buy her. I mean, where do you know? They're all like, what is that? You know?
Who do you write the check to?
Yeah, right. It's like so you don't do that, and it's like Jessi was talking about time. There was no such thing as you got to be there at 10 o'clock. There just wasn't. We went by the moon and the sun and rising and the seasons and whatnot. So, the Indian time, yes, running on Indian time is a big, huge thing back home because it is what it is, and it's just like there's nothing you can do about it. But yeah. So finding your center, right? So it says to know who you are, you must find their center. The center is knowing who you are and where you come from. We spend our lives looking for our center. The journey in life is to find a center again. So when I was thinking about just finding your center, when I see a lot of the kiddos in child welfare that I've come across working in ICWA or CPS, there's a lot of chaos going on in these children's lives. Number one, because they're removed from family, right? They're removed from mom. But number two, I look at the mothers, I look at the parents, and they're all over the map. They have not found their center. I don't know if they ever did find their center, but finding your center of who do you belong to? So when you have a kiddo out there that's in care, and I think one of the questions or comments that I got today in today's presentation was asked that, what do you say to a child when the child feels abandoned by their tribe and by their parent? That was kind of hard for me to answer that because I was thinking about that, and I don't know what to say to that child when they're feeling that way. Number one, if they're telling you that, that's great, because most kids are not going to tell you that. They're not going to open up to you like that. So if they are, that's great. Encourage them to talk and just listen. I had a kiddo in California that I was a part of in an ICWA case, and he had a brother who aged out. So he was 18, he aged out, and his younger brother was still in care. So I went to the court hearing and I said, Mom wanted to be transferred. Grandma was I think lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and she wanted the child, right? I could take him, blah, blah, blah. So I arranged all that stuff. I went out there and they said, well, did you talk to the older brother? And I said, well, no, I didn't. I said, I didn't talk to him, but I can. So I did. Talked to him, and he said, he just kind of looked at me, and I told him, I said, are you in agreement with that? Are you okay that your brother's gonna go back to South Dakota? You're staying here in California. And then he kind of looked at me, looked down, and he looked at me again. He goes, where were you when I was going through the system? He said, why didn't my tribe fight for me then? He said, no one fought for me. And I said, yeah. I said, I am so sorry to hear that. I said, I apologize. I said, but I was not the ICWA worker then. I'm sorry, I missed that. If I had gone on just a couple of years earlier, I probably would have gotten him too. I said, but I apologize for that. I said, I'm truly sorry. I said, but we didn't abandon you. I was not the ICWA worker back in those days. So I'm here right now with your brother. And I said, I'm asking for your permission, or what are your thoughts about what happens to your brother? He eventually reluctantly said, yeah, he was okay with that. He said, but I'm staying here. And I said, that's fine. You can stay there. But I did transfer him and place him with grandma, and she lived in Sioux Falls. But that kind of hurt me, not only as a Native person, but as a worker, because my predecessors weren't doing what they're supposed to when it came to stuff like that. And so, but I got kids like that all over the place when I was the ICWA worker. And how do you say that? Or what do you say to a child when they're saying that to you, right? It's just like, it's hard. It really is. And that the abandonment feeling that they get, the only way I think that you can do anything about that is you have to go through some form of healing. And if that means going down to the root, to the very, very root of that, then you have to go down to that root, to that. But what I found working with those kind of children is sitting there and just listen. Because if once they open up, and if they just a crack open up to you, that's a million miles away, right, for them, because a lot of times they just won't open up to you. And I found just listening to them and asking them questions, and kind of open-ended questions, and having them talk it out, because they eventually will. It just may take a little bit of time, but they eventually will. Sooner or later, they're going to tell you a lot of stuff, right?
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Today. We have a 9.5-year-old little guy with us right now, and didn't even know that he was Dakota Sioux. Didn't know, he knew about the res. That's where he lived, but like, we talked to him about it, we took him to the Heritage Museum. He didn't even, like, he was like, I don't know what you mean. And I don't know, like, how far or how much do we share, because it isn't our, obviously that's not our culture.
Yeah,
It is his family,
yeah,
hasn't shared much of him. And I reached out to some of his aunts and sisters.
yeah.
They're like, well, we don't know the history. And so I don't know. I kind of struggled with that a little bit.
I think any information given to that child is better than none. Obviously, mom and dad are not telling him stuff. And I think for me, and I don't know about Jessi, but for me working in this line, it frustrates me when I have a mother saying, I don't want the tribe involved. And I'm like, well, you don't have a choice. We're going to be involved, right? Because it applies, right? But there are some families out there that don't practice traditional stuff and are not in tune with that part of their life. But that doesn't mean their child has to be that way, So I always encourage foster parents and workers to encourage them to show them their stuff. If you have to take them to the reservation, take them there. If you have to take them to the powwow, take them there. If you have to do literature, take them there. The museum is a great place. Because that's who they are. If they don't get that, eventually they're going to grow up and saying, who am I? Who do I belong to? And I always use my significant other, and I've talked with Jessi about this. My significant other as an example of this. He was adopted out before ICWA even applied, when he was about 3, right? And he was adopted out to non-native family, hence Franklin. That's where Franklin comes in. But yet he's native, like no other native. And you see him, he's native. So he struggles between where do I fit in? Where's my identity? I'm Indian, and I look all like all these other Indians, but I didn't grow up. I grew up over here. So he has these loyalties of where do I go? What do I do? And then depending on the situation, he can sway with the native side, and in another situation, he's swaying on the other side. So it's like that form of identity of who he is a reality. And he's a grown adult now. So I always tell people start when they're young, because that's where it needs to be. They need to find out who they are, because eventually they're going to question it later on of who they are. And I had I had a child do that to me. It was very, I guess I was shocked by what he said. He was in an adoptive home, adopted when small, him and his siblings, and he was the oldest. He grew up and he started realizing that I don't look like you. But I'm your dad and your mom. But why do you look that way and I look this way? We all look this way. So in his mind, he was already firmly there's something not right. Right? Nobody told him. And then he disrupted that adoption. So what kicked in, I went there and said, what's the deal here? Well, we're playing him replacement because he's acting out. I'm like, okay. I said, okay. So I sat him down and I said, if I can wave a magic wand and give you whatever you want, what is it that you want? He said, I want to be with people that look like me. Yeah, that hit me in the gut. I said, okay. Obviously, that's not going to happen. He was already terminated and adopted out. But so I posed it to the workers and I said, what are we going to do in 6 months' time when he disrupts placement again? What are we going to do with this, whatever? Well, we'll come to that bridge when we get there. And I said, we are going to get to that bridge and we're going to be right where we're at right now, because his mind was already made up that I'm not going back there. And reluctantly, I talked to him and talked to him and talked to him. Eventually, he said, okay, I'll go back. He said, I'm only going back because I have siblings in that home. And he was being the protective parent to his younger siblings. And that was the only reason why he went back to that home. So when you got little ones that are kind of not in that traditional type realm, I always just encourage, still show it to them, still teach them, reach out to us guys, whoever you need to, and show them who they are, because identity is a very real thing of who you are in a child. So, yeah.
I have a question, if you don't mind, here on Zoom.
Yeah.
Is there like some sort of like mentorship program for them or something, so that way they can learn, because
I wish,
or something, so that way they can, because I don't even know, I wouldn't even know where to go,
Yeah. I don't know, maybe that's something that
We actually do have a, I didn't bring these yet because there's a spelling error on here and they're not approved yet, but this says supporting cultural connections for Native children in your home. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this was born out of a group I put together, of an affinity group for foster parents, and some state people are on it. And I'm hoping she's gonna be on it. And, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to align ourselves with any of you. You would reach out to me at Navy and I would assign you a mentor. And ideally, I'd love to tribe match. So I'm kind of heavy on the Turtle Mountain side right now, and then us.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for people statewide that it's like you have the heart to help your people, but you maybe don't have you can't foster. So what's the next thing you can do? You can mentor, and mentoring is all kinds of things, right? Like, hey, what is your best fry bread recipe? Like, you know, or hey, I'm going to the powwow, and I know sometimes that's hard to walk in being non-native. Like, how about I meet you at the gate? Let's all go in together and hang out. Or those books, those Ikomi, those different things that I could tell you to share, or just things like that. I can connect. If you're going to go visit the tribe, hey, my friend so-and-so is going to meet you and show you around. I don't know. So this is just at the birth stage. It's not being done yet. But you're going to hear about this like on foster care calls, and this will start going out. So look for this brochure. But meantime, call us. That's what you're going to call. You're going to call me and call me or call Raquel, and we can already align you with someone or answer any question you might have right now. But this is what we see as the next step. We will work towards somebody that's 18 and just aged out. Maybe they are a mentor for stuff.
So
I feel like, I cannot remember the name, but it's Lorraine Davis's organization.
Yeah.
I feel like they have Native youth nights too.
Yeah.
And they've been rotating schools in Bismarck, I think, when they've been doing it. 'Cause I think it was at our kiddo school last week. I don't know if it's every week, but they've been doing something.
I don't think they're every week, and sadly, just people are updating their calendars online like I want them to.
Yeah.
You know, but,
Yeah, I've been trying to
I
get
know
into one of those and I
Lorraine does a
can't
lot of
find
stuff.
a place to register.
And also look for Sacred Pipe
Sacred
Resource Center in Mandan, ran by Cheryl Carey. She also has different groups. She has like subgroups you could be involved in if you're worried
Yeah.
about Native youth and issues facing Native youth. You can go be part of that group, and I think they meet once a month. They give you stipends to come.
Well, even like I have a mom who said, I want him in grass dancing. I have looked everywhere to try and figure out how to sign him up to learn how to do grass dancing. I'm like, I don't know where to go. I've tried everything. And I don't know how, like where we should look for resources like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to come
No,
here.
no, that's fine. I think I got a couple more, I think 1 or 2 more slides, but on this slide here, I'm just basically saying we're all related. The first concept is respect our relatives. Second is we make relatives. So like Harmony, I mean, like Jessi was saying, harmony, I was like harmony in my mind. Making of relatives. So this is the Tuahe meaning family, right? So it's your mom, dad, aunties, uncles, cousins. And then what they do is what they call a hunka ceremony, which is a sacred adoption. So we have hunka relatives. So when a child, that's why we said a child's never orphaned, because families will take other family members as a hunka relative. And there's actually a ceremony that you go through to do that. So their kids are your kids and your kids are their kids. And so that's the adoption. It's meant, and they say that it's meant that the bond was strong and made with the creator. If the person lost a family member, they could hunka that member from someone that they are close to, like a hunka mom, dad, brother, sister. So like a lot of times when kiddos are removed in the system, they'll like, well, you can, who do your kid want to be placed with? I said, can you place with Jessi? We're not blood related, but in hunka, she's the fictive kin. She's, we grew up together, we're sisters, even though we're not blood. That would be my relative. So that's basically what this is, but there is a formal process of doing that. There's actual ceremony to do that. So the change in culture, foster care is a term used for a system in which child is obviously placed into a ward, group home, private home, or state foster home, right? The placement of a child is usually arranged through the government or social services agency. The institution, group home, or foster care is compensated for expenses. Foster care was not a system that was culturally made for our people. There was no such thing as foster care. There's no such thing as an orphan, because the whole tribe was the family, right? So that's pretty much it. I do have other slides in here that I will give you, and we can even download them off of this here.
Okay.
And you can pass them out. And it talks about like our 4 medicines, the tobacco, cedar, sweetgrass, and that. Then I also have another one on there that it's a whole little tiny booklet on, and the four corners, the colors, the alphabet. There's
alphabet,
even a
the
little video
numbers.
on there,
Yep.
the numbers and how to say 1 through 10
Yep.
is on there as well. I just didn't think we had time enough to go through all that. So,
Yeah.
but if any of you guys have questions, feel free to ask. No questions are dumb questions. So
Are there any tribes that really do not get along? I know when I was in high school, I had a friend who was Sioux, and for some reason, we were going to Belcourt for like we were cheerleaders, and she couldn't go because they said the parents said that wouldn't work. The tribes don't get along. It wouldn't let her go.
I don't know how long ago that was, but
That was
this,
like 20 years ago.
okay, yeah. So
I
present
don't
day,
think it's that broad, and I think what you
Yeah.
might find in Indian country is that it's probably less tribal and more familial, like my family's
Not
not
like in your family. Yeah.
And you just happen to be from two separate tribes. You
yeah,
don't really get that, like back in the day, enemies and
Mm.
enemy tribes. We don't look at it that way
No.
anymore.
not at all. Not at all. No. Is there any questions in the chat?
So far, none.
Okay. Yeah.
What is the, we've got 3 kiddos in our house right now, 2 adopted and our third one is foster, and they're all Native American. And, you know, our 2 littles, we have talked about it since day one. They have books, they're 2 and 4 years old. They
Yeah.
have different kinds of memorabilia that we've gotten from their reservations. We talk nonstop about it.
Yeah.
But at what age do you find that they, I don't want to say it clicks, but you know what I mean? Like they both know that they're adopted, even though our 2-year-old doesn't totally get what that means.
Yeah.
But, you know, we talk about his tribe and we talk about his tummy mama but I like the idea of I'm Native American and what that means, like, because culturally he's not growing up in it every single day.
Yeah.
So how do you, you know, I guess when does that happen or not that there's a light bulb moment, somebody
Yeah.
a
That's
lot of
more like
questions.
adolescent into that
Yeah.
early adulthood,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
that surging. And that's even nowadays, that's even harder to call, because I think a lot of times we relate to who we hang out with, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not around Native people, you're not gonna really latch
Yeah.
onto that concept. Like she said, talking about the young man, it's like, I wanna be where people look like me,
Yeah.
you know, those kinds of things. I just think it's different for everyone.
It is
depending
different.
on how you grew up. But
So I think
that's
that when
great
you're,
to
Yeah.
when that
talk about
child starts to ask questions, that's when you know that it's like, okay, something's not right here. I do not look like you. And and they're gonna start asking questions. So that's when you need to dive in there and let them know who they are and show them who they are, because that's gonna be with them all their life. And if they don't get that and they feel that abandonment, then you get anger, then you get outbursts, then you get behavior issues, then it goes on and on and on. And it all stems because I don't know who I am. I don't know where I belong. And everybody wants to belong somewhere, right? I mean, because that's who we are as humans. We want to belong somewhere. And most Native kids that are removed from their culture don't get that on a daily, obviously, right? So I think when that door opens up, and even if it's a crack, you need to start then. Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old girl in my home right now, and so I'm curious if she's really interested in her culture. She's Sioux.
Okay.
And if there's any great reading, she loves to read too. So if there's any great reading that you would recommend for her, she has some learning. She's teaching us Lakota right now.
You should teach us.
Yeah, she's really good at it. She's taught my daughter to count to 30, and it's helping her that we're excited about it. It's
Yeah.
helping her go find online
The online
dictionaries, right, where she
yeah.
can look it
Yeah.
up, and so that's good. But curious if there's any really good reading, because she wants to learn more.
Yeah.
And
There's
wanna
like,
put some resources in her
There's
house.
so much good reading out there. There's actually, it doesn't serve our purpose now, but they actually just opened an all Native bookstore in Pierre. Native owned, all Native literature, but what pops out to me, and it can be for young adults, and to me, is like, I absolutely love the book, not the movie, not that I don't like the movie, but the book, Neither Wolf Nor Dog, is amazing. Absolutely, I heard that. Yeah, it's a good book. I'm trying to think of for younger. So there's one, I don't know how to pronounce the first word, but it's Ohitika woman. That means half-breed woman. That's a good book, but I don't know who the author is of it offhand. But no, see, those are things you can ask us, and then we'll like pull our research together, and we can shoot you a list, you know?
Yeah.
But I know for young people right now, what is it Recount? Is that how you say it from Standing Rock?
Yeah.
Recount, Jessica Recount on Taken Alive. She writes young books for young kids, like she doesn't write the ICWA ones I'm telling you about. She writes different ones, like a whole new set of just put out. Like this is just this year.
Yeah.
Jessica Recount, Taken Alive. And her books are amazing for young littles. Like you go.
Is that
Yeah.
the gal that just did the reading, like the live reading?
Probably.
Yeah.
She was
Okay.
doing those, yes.
Yeah. So her dad is Jessi Leneaugh, who used to be chairman back in the day. I worked for him under him. And him and his wife died from COVID. They were both in the hospital and they died of a month apart from each other.
There was an article on that,
Yeah.
wasn't there?
Yep, that's her dad.
This, I don't know if this is a respectful comparison, but I'm gonna just throw it out there. So I have this friend who's from Canada, and she's Greek, 100% Greek.
Oh.
And so in the village in Canada, like there was a Greek school, and Greek kids went to regular school and they went to Greek school, learning about their culture and history. And I just wish that there was a place where on the weekends my kids could go, in addition to what I'm trying to teach them, to learn about their culture and their history. Because I can only teach so much. I can find all the resources in the books, but it's not going to be as great as someone who's truly from their culture, their tribe teaching them. And I just wish we could figure out a way to do that.
Standing Rock has, the Sitting Bull College there has that Lakota immersion school. And they usually do that during the summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you can always get on their website and find out when the next session is for that. But yeah.
There was a question that came in and said, in the Lakota tradition, does the children take the last name of the father or the mother?
Well, this day and age, it's more or less if they're married or not.
Sure.
Yeah. Back in the day, it's usually like I was saying earlier, when they were born, they were given a name at birth. They were given the White Shell name, Red Thunder name, or what have you when they were born. But because, you know, assimilation and all that stuff going over, we take surnames now. So now it's just whether if they're married or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if they're not married. Yeah, if they're not married, they're going to take their mom's last name.